demand and supply for rupee will determine the exchange rate, will have determine the rate of inflation. So your economy gets exposed to external shocks also, which are not in your control. So if you ring fence it, then you are a closed economy, then relatively you are stable. In early 90s, to be precise, in 1991, we say that was the watershed because we had economic liberalization. Why did we have economic liberalization? Because we had a huge foreign exchange sort of scarcity. There was a crisis triggered by the foreign exchange scarcity because we could not meet, or we were almost not able to meet some of our external repayment obligations. This is the time when Government of India actually took 50 tons of gold from here and pledged it to the Bank of England. And we got some $2-3 billion, and with that $2-3 billion, we met our external repayment obligations. So that is one stage at which we were. After the 90s, there has been a continuous liberalization. Okay, whether it is delicensing or whether it is relaxing your, export-import controls, or even whether it is, liberalizing your foreign exchange regime. On all these fronts, we have been liberalizing. Coming back to the, Infinity Forum, the Prime Minister made two observations. One, he said, the IFSC, we have only one IFSC today, that is the GIFT IFSC. It is not a physical premises. It is not a physical location. It is India's aspiration to become a global financial hub, to become a global leader. So that is the basic philosophy behind setting up this IFSC. Second, he observed that finance is the lifeblood of an economy, and technology is the carrier of finance. Now, these are all the concepts which you'll have to put together to understand why did we establish an IFSC. Of course, we can argue that it has been badly delayed. This concept of an IFSC could have been done even 10 years or 20 years back. But better late than never. At least it's high time now, when India is poised, as one of the largest economies in the world, one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and wanting to, catapult to a 5 trillion economy. This is the time when finance has to be leveraged. This is the time when technology has to be leveraged. And therefore, this is an opportune time to have an international financial services center. There is one misconception that in 2007, Percy Mistry report recommended that we should make Mumbai the international financial center. That's not correct. Percy Mistry report basically made 3 recommendations. First, it said that capital account controls should be removed. Okay, that means the whole country becomes, free capital account convertibility there. So no enclave. The whole country, like in the US or in the UK, you don't have a separate zone. The whole country, you have free convertibility. So that was the first recommendation. The second recommendation was that you have one unified authority. Don't have these 4 separate financial regulators. And the third recommendation was you need to drastically simplify your laws. It becomes very difficult to navigate, especially for foreigners. Now in 2007, it's believed that there was a inclination within the executive to look at the possibility of having full capital account convertibility. And it is at that point in time that you had this subprime crisis, there was a global financial crisis. And it's a matter of conjecture But maybe if there was no global financial crisis, maybe we would have become fully convertible. It's just a conjecture. I may be totally wrong. But we had the crisis. And this entire, thought process of going for convertibility was shelved. In fact, when there was the Asian financial crisis, India was praised that, because we were more pragmatic and we ring-fenced the economy, we did not suffer the pains of the Asian financial crisis. So, after that stage, when we had the financial crisis, now things have changed a lot. We are a much stronger economy. We have become a sort of a growth center, and global capital flows, they are footloose. They don't stay anywhere. They can move freely. So wherever there is a potential for investment and for getting good returns, capital will flow there. If we believe that we have immense potential to grow, then we have the potential to attract the global capital. Now there could be some reasons why global investors may be seeing some impediments. That, okay, we come here, but then the laws are complex. We come here, but there may be issues with repatriation. We may come here, but there may be risks about some regulatory overreach. Because they are not familiar with many of our, legal framework, regulation, etc. So if you want to bring in global capital, and you being, we are a democracy, India, the next 20 years is with Asia. Gone are the days where the focus, was in the developed countries. Now the focus has already shifted to the emerging countries, and that is getting reflected also in terms of the footprint the industry from Asia is having now, the global footprint. So, if the next 20 years is in Asia, then the main competitors, of course, are India and China. China, in a way, has plateaued because it has grown at 10% plus for 20 years now. It's not possible that you keep on growing for another 20 years. Therefore, it is India's sort of opportunity now to overtake China also in growth rates. And China is now about 5 times, the Indian economy. India has a huge potential to catch up with China. And for doing that, you need to attract as much global capital as you want. We are all facing, the risks of climate change. You are seeing it yourself. We are feeling it ourselves. Sometimes, you find that unusual things happen. You have all sorts of storms coming, cyclones coming too frequently, and places which have never experienced cold are experiencing cold. Places which have never experienced heat are experiencing heat. In a place like London, they never had fans because it was never hot. But now, you need air conditioners, you need fans. So things are happening. It's impacting even at the lowest level, at the micro level, whether it is fishing or agriculture, everywhere there is some disruption. So climate change risk has to be mitigated. And India, with 1.4 billion population, will have to play a huge role. And our Prime Minister said that by 2070 we will have zero emission. You may feel 50 years. 50 years is not long in the life of a nation. How much capital will you require to meet with that commitment of making zero capital emission? There is an estimate that you may require for achieving the sustainable development goals and achieving our commitments to, under the Paris Agreement, you may require $8 trillion by 2030 or 35. So in next 10 years, you need $8 trillion. $8 trillion is $8,000 billion. We can't generate $8,000 billion through our savings. So you need to bring capital. That is the story of IFSCA. You need to bring that capital. Whatever capital which is coming now by way of FDI or FI investment is good. It's impressive. We are getting about $60-80 billion annually. We are among the leading destinations. But it's not sufficient. The type of requirement we have got, that is a minuscule part of what we need. So, coming back to the Percy Mistry recommendations, Government of India felt that it will be difficult to open up the whole country. It's a very complex country, very large country. It's like a subcontinent. So why don't we do an enclave? And that's how it was decided that government will do an enclave. But whether you have one enclave or whether you have 2 or 3 or 5, it kept it open. So if you look at the genesis of this entire IFSC, it started off totally unrelated to this legal framework. When the Prime Minister was Chief Minister of Gujarat, as early as 2007, they brought out this Gujarat International Financial Tech City. So it's quite commendable that finance and tech, fintech is only 5 years old or 7 years old. But it was not there at that time. But anyway, they saw technology and finance as drivers. So it started there, but it actually became a real, IFSC only in 2015, where under the Special Economic Zone Act of 2005, they notified this as a financial center. And at that time, you did not have a dedicated act. When you did not have a dedicated act, what they did is that they gave the existing domestic financial regulators the responsibility of tweaking within the existing domestic laws and bringing out regulations which can make it slightly different from what the domestic, regulatory architecture is. So SEBI, RBI and all, they came out with something and they set up, this IFSC, it became operational. But in 2019 December, they came out with a separate act, the IFSCA Act. At that time, there were 2 options before government. One, can we have a self-contained act where we'll actually bring in all the 14, 15 laws which are there and have a self-contained act, voluminous, or shall we have a simple, short act with an extraordinary enabling power? So the government felt these are uncharted waters. Nobody has navigated. We have not navigated in these waters. So let's have a short, crisp, precise act, but with extraordinary enabling powers. So what Praveen mentioned, an unprecedented move of Section 31. Before Section 31, there's another unprecedented move. I mean, not unprecedented, but a very sort of liberal provision. That Section 3 defines what is a financial service. When Section 3 defines what's a financial service, they say that all these are financial services. And whatever else government will notify as a financial service is a financial service. So for example, operating lease, aircraft operating lease in domestic is not a financial service. Under Banking Regulation Act, it's not a financial service. Whereas today, 80% of Indian aircraft fleet is under operating lease, wet or dry. It's not under acquisition. So that entire business went away to Ireland. We are one of the largest aviation markets in the world. Almost becoming 3rd largest aviation market in the world. Growing very rapidly. But our entire business is going to Ireland. Why? You're not treating it as a financial service. So here we said it is a financial service. But that by itself is not sufficient. By merely calling it a financial service, how will you have the ecosystem? So many provisions had to be made. We studied what Ireland is offering. Most of those things were offered. But the biggest challenge has been who will finance? Because the Indian banks which are having presence here, in India they don't consider it as a financial service. So they have a lot of problem for this branch to consider it as a financial service, though legally it can consider it as a financial service. Foreigners, why will they come here? Then They are quite comfortable there. The whole ecosystem is there. How will you re-domicile it? So, it is not sufficient that if you have a legal framework or a regulatory framework by itself, it's not going to create the economic dividends. You need people to champion it. So who will champion it? We want government to champion it. We want Indian corporate to champion it. When you are having a international financial center, initial phase it will have to live off the domestic economy. When you look at financial services, broadly IMF categorizes them into three. It says an offshore financial jurisdiction. An offshore financial jurisdiction is nothing but, a tax-driven regime. It's a lot of secrecy is there. They won't disclose adequately. It is also called as a tax haven. Sometimes FATF finds it a little suspicious also. So there are, I won't name them. It can be controversial to name anybody. But there are these OFCs, offshore financial jurisdictions. These are basically tax driven. They have zero tax or all those things. They won't disclose. You have regional financial centers. Regional financial centers they don't have very large economy, but they have a very well-regulated financial system, and they're able to cater to the region. And they were international financial services center. That is, you have a large economy. We have a large economy. We are not an offshore financial jurisdiction. We are not a regional financial jurisdiction. We are an international financial jurisdiction in terms of our economy size. But to graduate from that, you need this huge impetus from the domestic economy. That means, initially, whatever Indian economy has been procuring from offshore to meet its internationalization requirements, it should start procuring it from here. Because this is, from FEMA angle, a non-resident zone. It is like an offshore. FEMA doesn't apply to the IFSC. So, why I am giving you this background is, laws are one thing, but laws by itself will not deliver unless that patronage is there. And unless that dose of ease of doing business and other things, promotion, outreach, all those things will have to, and you need champions. You need champions. Today, we see this, and that's how we start, we have been trying to take some proactive steps. For example, we saw aircraft leasing, so we have made that a very important area for ourselves. We have seen alternative investment funds have become the main carriers of international finance now. It's no more, banks or even multilateral banks. It is trillions of dollars are being carried by offshore investment funds. You must have heard of BlackRock. They handle about 13 trillion. All right. That is what? If Indian economy is 3 trillion, imagine. 4 times the Indian economy, one BlackRock is handling that sort of money. So you need those players to come. So if you want AIFs to come, you have to have that ecosystem. So we have taken AIF as a very important, and we have done the regulatory framework for the AIFs. Then today, green finance. Green finance is very important because there may be a situation, I am telling you, that 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, if you don't have an environment-friendly project, you may not get finance. Or you may get finance which is unaffordable. It may be such a high percentage that you will not be able to borrow at that rate and survive. But when you want to go green, there is an extra cost. If a project is 1 crore, a project which is green maybe 1.25 crore. So you may get finance at a cheaper rate, but you have to borrow more for the same project. So these are all costs. Now all these things demand that we need to have a very efficient financial system. We have a very well-developed financial sector. We have a well-regulated financial sector. We have a large economy. Therefore, we are well positioned to have, an IFSC. So that is basically, how you can develop an IFSC. And in the last 1.5 years, we have come out of the shadows of the domestic regulators. Earlier, the entire banking regime was basically RBI banking regime tweaked for IFSCA. Today, we have completely our own banking regime. We don't depend on one circular of RBI, except where you are transacting with the resident. If you're transacting with the resident, then RBI circular will be there. I can't. But other than that, we have our own regulatory framework. Similarly, for capital markets, we have our own regulatory framework. For insurance, we have almost started now. We have few regulations. We have few more regulations to go. Today, most of our reinsurance requirement is being done from offshore. All this can be brought back to onshore. And we'll also have to understand, we can't match, Dubai or Singapore in tax concessions. We will match or beat them in terms of sustainability. There are strong economic fundamentals. It's India-centric, and we can also make India South Asia. I mean, why only confined to India? All other neighboring countries which are friendly, there's no issue. They can all use this facility. And when there are efficiencies, it becomes more affordable. Today, for example, when you talk about cross-border remittances, we receive about 85 billion every year from our non-resident Indians and others, maybe overseas citizens of India, others. It costs about 7% of the money which comes is the cost for transferring money. It doesn't help anybody. It's costing you. If you do it through a Western Union or something, sometimes it costs 10%, especially for smaller amounts. A lot of people are in Middle East, they're sending money every month to their parents or brothers, sisters. It's costing a lot of money. That's where fintech comes. It's again a very important thing for us. Today we are talking about crypto. Sometimes, it's a bad word, crypto. What is this? Fine. Crypto, private cryptocurrency is not tenable. Because currency is a medium of exchange, it's a unit of account, it's a store of value. When it does not have sovereign backing, how can it be a currency? You see, the first time, always when currency was there, it was always linked to, can I spill over by 10 minutes? Yes. If you people have the appetite.
It's really very interesting.
Please. So, all the time currency has been linked to something. Till very recently, till 70s, currency was linked to gold standard. That means you had to have a gold, RBI or Fed had to have gold to print notes. Otherwise you keep on printing notes. But they saw this is becoming a problem. You can't print notes. Deficit financing, you are not able to do. So at some point in time, they de-linked it with, and way back, Kabuli Khan, I think in some 11th, 12th century, actually he was the first person who de-linked and said this is fiat currency. Anybody doesn't agree, chop off his neck. That's all. So what I'm saying is, basically, when you talk about crypto, that is the problem. Typically, when you had gold standard, you could convert that rupee into gold. Maybe 1/100th of a gram or whatever that value would have been. Crypto, nothing is underlying. That is the problem. Nothing. The normal note, even if it is not having gold standard, sovereign backing is there. The governor of RBI is promising to pay to the bearer of the note to pay you a sum of 10 rupees, to pay you a sum of 100 rupees. So the sovereign banking, fiat currency, that's also not there. That is there. So while the technology on which crypto rides is extraordinary, it is decentralized finance, it cannot be accepted as a currency. That's what Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, I think in one of the sessions, she was talking about crypto. So she was quite open. She said, yes, crypto we can't ignore, but it should be globally regulated. All countries will have to regulate. So much about crypto. So we also feel as an international financial center, we can't shy away from crypto. We have to look at it. Whether we can't do anything which the government of India, we can't deviate from that. But I am saying we need to distinguish between crypto as an asset and crypto as a currency and crypto as a technology. Then we'll have to pick those which are less volatile and less risky and use the crypto to give that push to our economy. That's very important, because without that you will lag behind. So how you will be able to do it, how investors' interests can be protected, all those things we have to see. So to sum up, basically, I have steered away from all those, Schedule 115 acts to add. He said 14, Factoring Act also was brought in, so it became 15. So 15 acts and IFSCA Act, 16 acts, what does each act do? All that is fine, all that information you will get. But getting a macro picture, why an IFSC in 2020? Why are we going for an IFSC? Only shows we are not yet ripe for full capital account convertibility. But we are ripe for experimenting with a foolproof international financial services center, where we can experiment all those things which are possible in a freely convertible currency economy, an economy which has full capital account convertibility. And I'll conclude by giving one or two examples. INR in 50s was used in Gulf. I don't know how many of you know, INR was used in Gulf. Nepal and all, even now they use INR, but INR was used in Middle East. That means in 50s you were an international currency. So today, when we are becoming an important player in trade, a lot of people are interested in holding INR.